I'd like to call to order the January 5th, 2010 Louisville Planning and Zoning Commission and announce that we have a quorum present. Item 2 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the December 15th, 2009 meeting. Do I have any comments, corrections, questions from any of the commissioners? If not, do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion from Karen, second from James to approve the meeting minutes of the December 15, 2009 meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The meeting minutes are approved. Item 3 on the agenda is public hearing zoning. Item 3A is consideration of a zone change request from single-family residential R7.5 to Old Town Mixed Use 2 on a .17 acre tract located at 326 North Hatcher Avenue, further identified as Lot 1 of the Rawlings Edition. The request is being made by Christy and Jerry Steed, the property owners. This is case number PZ 201000101. That's a lot of binary.
As the chairman indicated, the property is zoned R75 currently, but it is within the Old Town Design District. The Old Town Master Plan calls for the zoning for the property to ultimately be Old Town Mixed Use 1. The owners of the property would like to change it to be consistent with the Old Town Master Plan. They have no specific plans for it at this time. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Gene? All right, thank you, Gene. At this time, I will open the public hearing on item 3A. Anyone wishing to speak for or against item 3A can come forward, give us your name, speak at this time. If not, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion from Karen, second from Bill to close the public hearing on item 3A. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Public hearing is closed. Gene, do we need to vote on each one of these separately? I cannot remember suddenly.
On zoning, you vote on them each separately.
Okay.
If it was a public hearing plats,
Okay.
then you can do them together.
I thought so. Just wanted to check before I did every one of these one by one. So do we have a motion then on item 3A to recommend approval to City
Make a
Council?
motion to accept item 3A as presented.
A motion from Jim. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alvin. This is to recommend approval of item 3A. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries on item 3A. Item 3B is consideration of a zone change request from single-family residential R7.5 to Old Town Mixed Use 2 on a .24 acre tract located at 522 Edna Avenue, further identified as Lot 7, Block 4 of the O.B. Dick Edition. The request is being made by Christy and Jerry Steed, the property owners. This is case number PZ 201000102.
Fairly similar situation, only on this particular property, the house has been removed due to damage from a storm, so the property is vacant, but they're requesting the Old Town Mixed Use 2 zoning, which is consistent with the Old Town Master Plan, and staff would recommend approval.
Thank you, Gene. Any questions on this one from any of the commissioners? If not, at this time, I'll open the public hearing on item 2B. Anyone wishing to speak for or against item 2B can do so at this time. And if we have no one, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close the public hearing. Second.
Motion from Jim, second from James to close the public hearing on item 3B. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Public hearing is closed on 3B. Do we have any additional comments before we have a motion? If not, do we have a motion on item 3B?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Karen and a second from Bill to recommend approval of item 3B. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries on item 3B. Item 3C is consideration of a zone change request from agricultural open space to light industrial on 3 tracts totaling 4.40 acres. Two of the tracts are located on the west side of Holford's Prairie Road, south of Midway Road, and the third tract is located on the east side of Barfneck Road, south of Midway Road, further identified as tracts 39, 43, and 44 of the S.M. Hayden Survey Abstract 537. The request is being made by the Van Tau Group on behalf of the property owner. This is case number PZ 201000103.
The property is near what's been the Louisville Auto Auction. There are some purchasers of the auto auction and surrounding properties, and these 3 tracts are part of the surrounding properties. All the zoning in that area is currently light industrial. Light industrial is what the East Louisville Plan calls for. So their request is consistent with the East Louisville Plan and consistent with the other zoning that's currently in the area. We would make a recommendation for approval.
Thank you, Gene. Any questions for Gene on item 3C from any of the commissioners? If not, at this time I'll open the public hearing on item 3C. Anyone wishing to speak for or against item 3C may come forward, speak your name, sign in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Vaughn Bucher with G&A Consultants, and we're representing the Van Tile Group. We're working with them as their engineer and surveyor, and I'll be glad to answer any questions. Obviously, I'm here in support of this request.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this item or any other input to this item? And if not, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close public hearing.
Motion from Karen. Do I have a second from Jim to close the public hearing on item 3C? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Public hearing is closed on item 3C. Do we have any additional discussion before we make a motion on item 3C? If not, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to recommend approval.
Second.
Motion from Karen, second from James to recommend approval of item 3C. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries on item 3C. The final item is item 3D, consideration of a zone change request from light industrial to public use zoning on a 47.5-acre tract located on the west side of Railroad Street, south of Business State Highway 121, further identified as tracts 35, 36, 73, and 74 of the J.W. King Survey Abstract 695 and Tract 15 of the J.W. Haven Survey Abstract 541. The request is being made by the Denton County Transportation Authority, DCTA. This is case number PZ 201000104.
The Denton County Transportation Authority is a public governmental entity, and public governmental entities are allowed to operate in any zoning category. But as they've done previously, DCTA is requesting the change in zoning to public use on this property, which is proposed for their maintenance facility for the soon-to-be moving passenger rail system. They have the 3 station locations in Louisville, one in the south, one in Old Town, and one in the north end of town to serve Louisville and Isla Village. But this will be the maintenance facility for all of those uses. And they have agreed to change the zoning or request to change the zoning to public use on the property. Current zoning is light industrial. They could do it in light industrial even if they were a non-public entity, but being a public entity, we felt it was best that they change all of their sites to public use to better represent what's actually happening on the property. We would recommend approval of the change in zoning.
Thank you, Gene. Any questions on this item or on the tract in question from any of the commissioners? Gene, I have just one question because I can't seem to figure out what it is. What is the HI zoning to the east of that?
The HI zoning to the east, that's east, all the heavy industrial zoning in Louisville is east of the railroad track. And that particular, there's 2 or 3 different users in that area. The Batson Contracting had been using a good part of that property. In fact, took a lot of it out of the floodplain. But there are 2 or 3 other heavy industrial users over in that location.
Okay. Thank you, Gene.
Gene?
Oh, go ahead.
I have a question for Gene. In my back packet here, I think it's telling somewhere in here, there's an email from Steve Witt. I don't have no idea. Wadaki. Asking us to not pursue, to table it or not pursue it at this time with land acquisition problems. Do we maybe need to table this until that is resolved?
They have not actually finalized the purchase of all their property, and what we would recommend is that you all go ahead and make a recommendation on it, which we've done this before, where a contract was pending or they were about to finish the acquisition. We will hold it before it goes to the city council until they send us information that they have indeed completed all the purchase of the entire piece of property, or they have a letter from all the property owners authorizing them to request the change in zoning. Since your action is not a final action, we feel it would be appropriate for you all to go ahead, if you choose, to take action on the request, because it is a reasonable request in our view. But we will hold it at their request before it goes to the city council until either the property is acquired or they have something in writing from the property owners authorizing them to make the change.
Karen, you good with that?
Still a little confused. Sorry.
I believe the staff recommendation is that we open the public hearing and continue it to the February 2nd meeting, allowing them time to actually finally acquire all of the property and attend the meeting.
And that would be an option that you all could certainly do, is just continue the public hearing until the February 2nd meeting to give them time, or you can go ahead and take action, and then we'll hold it until they complete what they need to complete before we send it on to the council. Final action doesn't come until the council acts on it.
Right.
I think I would feel more comfortable to table it for them until they come to us, or until they get their problem solved.
Do we need to go ahead and open the public hearing and then table and continue the public hearing until the next?
In either case, you need to open the public hearing. If you want to continue it till February 2nd, you can do that. That will certainly not surprise them. If you want to go ahead and make a recommendation on it, then after you close the public hearing, then we can go ahead and sit on it until it is ready to go to the city council.
Even if we open the public hearing, though, we have to close it and then continue the item until the next meeting.
No, if you open the public hearing and you want to put it off until February, you would just open it and then continue, have a motion to continue the hearing until February 2nd.
Yeah.
It's your prerogative.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, then at this time, I will open the public hearing on item 3D. Anyone wishing to speak for or against item 3D can do so at this time. It doesn't appear that we have anyone, so do we have a motion to continue the public hearing until the, I guess the February 2nd, we said it would be, meeting?
I'll make a motion to continue the, this particular item until February 2nd, our February 2nd meeting.
That is our correct meeting date, right? February
Correct.
2nd? Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Karen and a second from Bill to continue the public hearing until the February 2nd, 2010 meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, item 3D, the public hearing is continued, will be continued on February 2nd. We will plan to take action on at that time, provided that all the loose ends are tied up by the DCTA, so. This time, then, we'll continue on to item 4. Item 4 is regular hearing. Item 4 is consideration of an amendment to the phasing plan for the 121 Hebron Station project, zone mixed-use 90, bounded by Lakeside Circle to the north, State Highway 121 to the south, the Timber Creek to the west, and the DGNO Railroad to the east.
If you all will recall, a year or so ago, or several months ago, you acted upon a zone change request for the Huffines Family Partnership to do a mixed-use development in South Louisville near the DCTA train station. They presented their plans and said, this is what we want to do, and this is how we want to do it. That was all accepted. It was our first mixed-use zoning that has gone through that's not Old Town mixed use, and it requires a concept plan. In the concept plan, they laid out exactly how they wanted to develop the property. Well, financing for apartments and construction in general is not what it was at the time that they came through initially. So they have submitted a new plan to do exactly the same project, but to do it in a different fashion, and instead of 3 or 4 phases, do it in 10 or 12 phases, partly because their financing requires that they can build only a smaller number of units, and those units have to be substantially occupied before they can then get financing for the next phase, which will make the project a little slower until such time as they can get financing more consistent with what they were planning before. You all do have the narrative of what they're proposing to do, and staff has reviewed the narrative. We've been going over it with them for a couple of months now, and it does outline what they're proposing to do. You should have had in your packet a map that shows graphically what they're talking about in their narrative. If you feel comfortable with just the narrative, we can go forward. If you'd like to see the map, if you'll recess for 5 minutes, I'll get a copy of the map, and we can go over that.
Did we get a map? I don't remember
No.
seeing. Oh, okay. I thought you said we got a map in the
There
packet.
should have been a map in your packet. There was no map in your packet.
Okay.
So if you all feel comfortable with what they're doing based upon their narrative, because the narrative is what we go by, the picture is just a graphic of their development, and it's a color-coded for the different phases. But if you want to see the map, we'll certainly be glad to go up and get it.
Do we have any preference from the commissioners?
I think it's pretty well explained in the narrative.
Okay. Anyone else feel they need to see the map?
No.
Okay. I think we're good then, Gene.
Okay. Well, the project itself will be exactly, when it's finished, it'll be exactly the same as before, but instead of starting in the middle and working their way out, they're planning on starting on the western edge up by Lakeside Circle, I believe it is, and building their first phase there with a pool and their office, and then move eastward from there. But it is just being done primarily because financing is a little harder to come by. They were able to get some financing that would allow construction of the apartments, but under those conditions, and that really didn't allow them to start with the phasing that they had originally proposed. Nothing else on their plan. The looks of the units, the layout overall, the same variances, everything is essentially the same. We talked about how to deal with an amendment in the phasing, since the project is the same. In the ordinance, there's provision if they come in with, say, 10% more square footage or less square footage for retail, or 10% more apartment units or less apartment units, then they have to go back through the whole process again. We really didn't anticipate just a change in the phasing when we drafted the ordinance. There's where they're doing essentially the same thing as before, only doing it in a different order, and in this case more phases instead of fewer phases. So after talking at staff and talking with the city attorney, it was our feeling that the best way to accomplish this is to bring their narrative to you, and for you all to give a recommendation to the city council. We'll then forward this on to the council for them to take a look at. If everyone agrees, then they'll be able to start the project sooner. If for some reason they're turned down, if you all recommend denial, the council recommends denial or denies it, then the worst thing happens is they still have the old plan approved, but it's just going to take that much longer to build it because they are not able to obtain the financing to get started on the project. This would allow them to get started on the project consistent with the opening, hopefully, of that South Louisville station. So there would be at least a few apartments down there near the opening of the station, and others coming along in future years.
Okay, so do we have any questions for Gene before? I guess we don't have to open a hearing on this one. So do we have any questions for Gene about, any questions or concern about the change to the phase approach? Anyone? Gene, I noticed in one part that it said, I was trying to find it here. Probably buried somewhere that I can't see it, but it said it would take, maybe I'm misreading this, that's why, because I read it a couple times. It's down at the bottom of the like the first page of the narrative. I guess I'm confused as to whether this is referring to the current. It says, all subsequent phase will follow in the same 12 to 15 months from the previous phase. The obvious effect of this is that the project, if we only utilize the currently available financing, would take 10 years to complete. Are they talking about under this new proposed one?
Under the new proposal, if they're not able to later find some other method of financing, then they're estimating that it takes 12 to 15 months per phase for the construction phase and for leasing enough units that they're then funded for a second phase. They're estimating that process will take 12 to 15 months. So if they're not able to ever find any other financing, then the project could take over 10 years to complete. If, say, in 2 years, they are able to find other financing, then the first 2 phases would have been financed under this particular type of program, and the others could be financed under a different program, which would allow them more flexibility to build more units and build more amenities faster. But in a worst-case scenario, it could take 10 to 12 years for this to finish.
What is the risk that we end up with trying to think of, what's the ones on Bel Air, Pulte? No.
Yes, I know what you mean.
Is that Pulte on Bel Air, the one that got stopped? Portrait, thank you. I knew it was a P. I couldn't think of. So what's the risk we end up with another Portrait where we get a nice wall and...
There's a risk with that, anything that's developed. A single-family home could start, and they run out of money or have some problems, and it doesn't get...
True, but most single-family homes don't generally plan to take up to 10 to 11 to 12 years to finish out their building.
There's one in Sanger that's been there for 20 years, and I'm not sure if anybody's ever bought it and finished it. A big one near the freeway. But that type of problem could happen with any development. This doesn't open it particularly to that type of concern. In fact, if anything, the reason for the constraints on the financing is to prevent that type of thing where they are only allowed to build a smaller number and have to show that those are substantially occupied before they get financing for another phase. With the original thing, they were going to build quite a few units. I believe it was 600 units or so in each phase, or at least the first phase. This one, it'll take 2 to 3 phases before they'll have 600 units.
So when the first phase is done, the rest of the property will look just like it's
right. They'll clear it off. They have some off-site improvements. But when the first phase is done, and they get substantially occupied, then they'll move to the second phase and start.
The pavement and the parking and all that will go with the buildings the next phase.
Right. Each phase will have to stand alone, so that if they do get in a situation where they build 1 or 2 phases and then nothing happens for 5 years, those phases will stand alone and comply with all the applicable.
So it's not going to look like it's a abandoned property. It's just, it'll look very nice in the front because we moved it forward, right?
So you're saying kind of put the finishing, normally what would be some of the later finishing touches on early so that as you build out the phases, it doesn't look like you've got a big 5-year gap and there's something that's supposed to be there, but you can tell it's not really there.
It's all contiguous.
Right.
So unless you see the plans, they'll build the first couple hundred units, and then they'll build the next couple hundred units next door to that. So somebody driving by just sees those 1 or 2 phases. They don't know what's supposed to happen with the rest of the property.
Okay.
So it's not like they would go in and build the streets. In fact, that's one of their limitations, is they can't go in and build the streets to serve the entire subdivision and then come back and build the buildings later. They've got to do the phasing where all the infrastructure has to stand alone for that particular phase. But other than the stuff that might be off-site, they're not going to be building anything outside of that first phase. And then when they get to the second phase, they'll build only the things that are applicable to that second phase, and so on.
And if this is approved by the City Council, what will be ready? When's the rail station supposed to be active? Or approximately?
Late this year or very early next year.
I'm assuming nothing will really be there at first when the rail station is active, probably not even phase 1.
Assuming their phasing plan gets approved and they submit their site plan and those get approved, they should be well under construction by the time the train station opens. I don't know that they will necessarily have, they won't be complete, but they could have some units available for rent if everything moves like I'm sure they hope it does.
Do we have any other questions or concerns? Jim?
Only a comment in that, if you all will recall, this was quite the dynamic format that more than we've ever seen in our city. And if anybody's familiar with any of the large developments like in Addison, so to speak, and they have a circle area there, they phased that in. It didn't take as long as we're talking here, but it certainly took quite some time to build up around, and they're still adding to their similar type of development that they're doing here. As Gene mentioned, we run into that possibility like the Portrait situation in anything that we would recommend or approve. You know, frankly, I, for one, would like to see this thing get off the ground and get moving. Let's get some synergy. That's only going to endorse the rail, and it's going to make it more attractive for people to get moving. It's about time we get it on with something like this.
I think they're, not trying to put words in their mouth, but I think their anticipation, as well as a lot of others, is that within 18 to 24 months, the markets will have returned to a point where they'll be able to find financing for everything else. But they also wanted to put on paper the worst-case scenario that if it takes 10 years for the financing to be available, they still have a vehicle through this package, this type of financing, to be able to build the whole thing. It just takes that much longer. If they're able to get the other financing, then they wrap up what was done under this financing and go under a different set of financing that could move things much faster, as they had originally intended to do. Right. But the project itself will be essentially or perhaps exactly the same. They've made no anticipated changes in the scope of the project or anything having to do with the project itself.
Okay. Thank you, Gene. So is there anything else? Mary? I'm sorry, not Mary. I didn't mean to call him Mary down there. Karen, Jim, Calvin, Bill, Joy, James, nothing. Okay, well, there is no public hearing on this, so if we have no more discussion, do we have any type of recommendation for item 4A for the City Council from the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Make a recommendation. We approve item number 4A as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Jim and a second from James to recommend item 4A, which is an amendment to the phasing plan for the 121 Hebron Station, to the City Council. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries on item 4A. Item 5 is an adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second, I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion from Karen. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second from Alvin to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting